Doctor Who in its current run has been on air for the last 14 years, stretching over 11 series and has held 6 actors in the lead role. But like all good things, they must come to an end, or at the very least, go away for a while. Although a show that offers limitless potential, unfortunately being a property of the BBC, and with the show receiving criticisms of becoming stale within the last couple of years, it's fair to say that it can't quite live up to its hype. After all, a show is only as good as it's written. Speaking pre-Series 11, the show had been slacking for a while, with poor character writing, predictable story arcs, and it had all been becoming a bit too repetitive, and a massive shake-up was seriously needed to keep the show on its feet. It was pretty much confirmed at this point that if Series 11 hadn't performed as well as it did, then Doctor Who would be getting the axe. The question is, was Series 11 enough to keep the show alive? Considered a massive success within the TV industry, reaching new heights with its opener and becoming the second highest performing series since Series 4 10 years prior, you can't deny that Series 11 wasn't getting the viewers. But was it keeping them? Now, I'm not going to do the whole, well, the viewing figures dropped off each week argument, because this is common for any show, and speaking solely Doctor Who, they would only tend to rise, say if a big villain or actor was revealed to be returning, something that Series 11 did not have. That said, with the quality of writing and lack of direction the series offered, leaving a lot of fans feeling underwhelmed, are the audience going to stick around and continue to tune in each week, or are we just repeating history, until we're back at Series 10 numbers? Now, my personal thoughts are that Series 12 will be an improvement. Chibnall is a very reactionary writer, he does take on board criticisms, and I'm sure he'll do the same when it comes to this. My only fear is, just as Series 10 was an improvement over 9, is it too late to now rectify things? After all, Series 12 won't have the same level of marketing, hype, and promise of all new things. This combined with a 1-year break, and it's not looking too promising. I will now go over some of the times the question of cancellation has came up, and go over some of the things that may have led to the show's downfall. Now, if you grew up during the 90s, then you'll most likely be aware of the Wilderness Years, a 15-year gap lasting from 1990 to 2004, where Doctor Who was completely off air, with the exception of the TV movie in 1996. But could this break have actually have been for the better? The show had been on the ropes for a while, receiving many complaints, low viewership, and had become a bit of a laughingstock within the mainstream, often slated for its wobbly sets and bad special effects. Even 12 years on, when the public were asked if they'd be interested in seeing Doctor Who return, only around 20% actually answered yes, pushing Russell T Davies to lie to the BBC because he believed in the show so much. When the show came back in 2005, Russell pitched the idea as a one-off thing, with only given the one series, would see the Doctor and Rose fly off into the universe. Luckily for us, the show took off and this wasn't the case. The first talk of cancellation came up in 2008, with the news of RTD stepping down as showrunner, as well as the departure of David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. The BBC were concerned that people wouldn't be able to accept the change, and it would no longer draw on the high numbers it had been doing. Bring along the Moth. Well, the first few years went surprisingly well. After making the show a global success with Series 6, as well as his work on Sherlock raking in the dough, the BBC let Moffat off the reins to do as he pleased going forward. But things weren't going as well as they seemed. With the lead up to the 50th on his shoulders, and not being able to commit himself fully to Series 7, Moffat had planned to keep Smith on for one more season, giving him a chance to neatly wrap up Eleven's story, and both him and Smith would leave the show together. As we know, this didn't happen. With Smith pulling out last minute, this threw a bit of a spanner in the works for Moffat. This also resulted in a lot of Series 8 having to be quickly rewritten in aid to suit a new Doctor. 2014 was the debut series for 12th Doctor Peter Capaldi. I can remember during his casting there was a lot of backlash about his age, that he was apparently too old or not hot enough to be the Doctor. I hate this fandom. Anyway, I digress. Unlike the mumbling wizard we had with Smith, the 12th Doctor was going to be a much darker incarnation, being much more calculated and having less compassion for human life. I mean, does anyone remember the whole 100% Rebel Time Lord thing they pushed? Series 8 was about a Doctor who was unsure of himself and finding out what sort of a man he was. But with this darker spin on his character, people started to turn away, with complaints that the new Doctor had become too alien and unlikable. This, combined with the more light-hearted stuff intended for Smith, made the series feel quite inconsistent and jarring for some viewers. Come along Series 9. Series 9 to me is the definition of how not to approach a problem, in doing a complete 180 on the 12th Doctor's character. I mean, let's compare this scene from Series 8 to the first time we see him in Series 9.
Do we start the clock?
Not yet. Focus, focus, focus! All of that is your grief, your trauma, your resentment. And now, it's mine.
It's gone.
No, it's not enough for me, because now it thinks I'm you. Start the clock.
No, put it down. Stop. This is not character development. The inconsistency of the Doctor aside, this was not the only thing hurting the show at the time, as the advertising campaign weren't exactly on the ball either. I mean, when your trailer pull is same old, just the Doctor and Clara Oswald in the TARDIS, then you know something's up. Like, come on guys, in a series that both offers stories set on Skaro and Gallifrey, this on paper had the potential to be one of the best series of the modern run. But nope, instead we get Maisie Williams and Hellbent. Move forward to 2016, the show is on a 1-year hiatus. This is the beginning of the end for Doctor Who. With attempts to re-spark interest in class, haha, fuck you, this really didn't help Doctor Who's current situation, with Series 10 receiving some of the lowest viewing figures within the show's history. Although advertised as a fresh new start, the audience just no longer cared. So here's my take. If it were up to me, after Series 12 I'd give the show 3 more consecutive years, leading up to the 60th, preferably with a series to coincide. These 1-year breaks aren't the best. Whittaker would leave after Series 13 and a new Doctor would take the helm for Series 14 and 15. Doctor Who would go out on a high, with audiences wanting more. I'd imagine the 60th realistically having 5 Doctors, with the current Whittaker, Smith, Tennant and maybe Capaldi. I'd then put the show on hiatus for the minimum of 6 years, leaving enough time for the toxic fanbase to get a grip, as well as leave enough time in between so that when the show did return, it would be something new and people would be excited. Something I think worked quite well when the show came back in 2005 was the fact that it was called Series 1, making it as accessible as it could be. So after being out of the public eye for so long, to then come back as Series 16 could be a bit daunting. I mean, I know people that want to get into the show now but are turned off by the amount of seasons, and this is without even getting into Classic. But then again, calling it Series 1 would just be confusing, and also really annoying to have lined up on the shelf. So I don't know, I guess Phase 3, if you want to go with that. I don't know, but I think it would have to be its own chapter in Who's life in order to recapture those golden years. When the show came back, I could see it experimenting and playing a bit of its format more. We could possibly see the show serialised, and although I do think Doctor Who needs its standalone stories, given a platform like Netflix or BritBox or whatever, with a lot more money behind it, I could easily see something like that in the future happening. The problem that a lot of Series 11 had, other than its lack of ambition, is that it tried to capture the essence of the RTD era. It was taking what was done and tried, and that just doesn't work. The reason the RTD era works as well as it does is 1, it's RTD, and 2, it was new. It was of the time, and yes, although Series 11 looks of the time, it hasn't managed to capture enough of the drama elements that make it work. When Moffat took over, he focused a lot more on sci-fi and clever bonkers ideas. And love or hate them, each of these eras had their own flavour because they weren't trying to be something that they weren't. I think this is mainly due to the show just running out of steam. Yes, we can bring in great writers and have these big actors come on, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't feel like it has the heart. Thank you so much for watching. These were of course my thoughts. If you have any other ideas that you would do, then be sure to leave them down in the comment section below. I'll be glad to read through them to see if you agree or not, or even how you would approach this problem. Anyway, I've been Jean-luc. Goodbye.